in New York last year with the Handbag Tribe. One of the absolute highlights for me of that trip, as well as the fabulous as it is New York City and being in New York with all of those fabulous people, was going to Fashionfile. Now, I know if you're not a handbag lover, that is going to sound, when one looks at all of the iconic landmarks that are in New York City, a tad ridiculous. But if you are a luxury handbag enthusiast or lover, Fashionfile is a little bit like coming home to the mothership. There are so many bags there, and they have stock and bags that you just cannot go into a boutique and see. You have an array of Birkins, you have an array of mini Kellys, you have things that are just not readily available. You also have, because it is Preloved, so many bags that come from past collections and past seasons that either you maybe didn't know about, or you weren't able to get, or you didn't have the funds at the time, and you can then source them and they become available. I have said many times on my channel that if I lived in America, I would shop even more than I do now, and it would be because of the availability of Fashionfile. Now, this is not sponsored in any way. I just think that their setup and the amount of stock and the bags that they receive into their online and physical stores in America is absolutely astounding. There are so many pieces. Like, I got the Petite Malle, the Fluoro Petite Malle up there from Fashionfile. I got the Chanel La Pausa over here, and I got this bag. When we were going to New York, I knew that I was going for this bag in Fashionfile, and I was crossing my fingers and hoping and praying that, and I know that's a little bit extreme, but that this would still be available whenever we got there, because I wanted to see it in person. And they have examples like this. I didn't even know this was in the boutique. I don't know if this came to Dublin. I certainly didn't have a chance to buy it. But there it was. I was able to get it, look at it, try it on. I actually paid under retail for this. I was able to get other bags that I hadn't been able to get. And for me, as someone with this passion, it was very much an experience. And there is a vlog on my channel with all of the footage from Fashionfile. It was a fabulous day. There's so much to see. Everyone bought bags, apart from Lisa, I think, but Lisa lives in New York. And there was just, it blew me away a little bit, the amount of bags that they had on display and that you could buy there and then. Obviously, the availability of being able to buy Birkins and Kellys and mini Kellys there and then comes with a price tag. You're not paying the retail price for these. The fact that you can walk in and buy bags that were maybe very hard to get, sold out, gone viral, no chance of buying anymore, completely gone, you're going to pay a premium. And when I talk about Fashionfile in my videos, what I get quite often in the comments is, yes, but their prices. And I get that. Some of their bags, whenever you look online, are very, very highly priced. But it's because you can get them. Now, I'm not defending the prices. I'm not there to know how they come up with these prices. But it's because they're available to buy, and market-led demand means that the price of, say, a Birkin that you can just go and pick is going to be very high. That being said, I do appreciate when I look on their site, sometimes their prices are higher than what other resale places would be. But they do come, I suppose, with a certain credibility to them because they're such a big store, and I guess that gives a lot of people a lot of comfort. If I lived there, I would be in a lot of trouble, and I've said that often. The reason that I do not buy more bags from Fashionfile now in the UK is because of the customs. If I buy one from Fashionfile, they ship it and I will pay the customs into the country. Obviously, Fashionfile as well is located in America, so you have the price that they quote and then you have the tax of whatever the state is, and then I would also pay the shipping and the customs bringing bags at these prices in would be very, very hefty. But guess what? Fashionfile is coming to the UK, or Fashionfile is kind of already here in the UK. There was a company in the UK called Lux Collective. Lux Collective was around for about 8 years or so. It was ran by two brothers in England. They had started it quite small and built it up. And from what I can tell, it had a pretty good reputation. It was a pretty solid business. They didn't have the type of inventory or stock that Fashionfile would have, but they did have a good business model. Then something absolutely devastating in the business world happened to them in 2024, and they had a warehouse where they kept all of their stock. I think originally they did buyout, but they also did consignment. So some of the stock they would have had would have been their own that they had purchased. Some of it would have been people like ourselves having left it in on consignment. And that warehouse, which they said at the time had a lot of security, it had cameras, it had motion sensors, it had locks. But we all know vulnerabilities for businesses, even if you take as much precautions as you think. And they were broken into, and I think the news reports at the time said around about half of their stock of a value of about £500,000 was stolen. And for any business, that's absolutely devastating. They obviously had to go through the stock to find out what was missing. They had to notify all of their customers as to the stock that was gone. They had to try and rebuild. I believe I did read at the time that they were eventually able to repay everyone who had left stock with them. But I did read that it took some time. They obviously were working through insurance, claims to get the money paid back to them. And I know if I was one of the people that had the stock with them and had to wait a lengthy period of time for the money to be returned, that would be very frustrating. But at the same time, I would imagine they just did not have the funds there to pay out all of that money in one go. And when that happened, they did try to keep going. They kept going, I think, for approximately a year after that. And they then closed early in 2025. From what was reported online, and they have a TikTok, they have social medias. I will link down below what they are. They were the Lux Collective at the time. I believe they had TikTok, Instagram, and probably some other social media presence as well. But at the time, I heard they took the decision, a devastating decision, that they had no other choice really but to close the business, because they had been fighting probably morning, noon and night since that happened to try and rebuild it, to try and build it back up, to try and pay people back. And recovering from that would be no mean feat. And I think it just took its toll on the business. And with the costs associated with the business, it just meant that they couldn't really continue. And they closed in and around, I think it was around March 2025. They are now back. And they are back as Fashionphile Collective. And they have TikTok. This is all on TikTok. And there's new news reports on this as well. And what they explain in their TikToks is when they were still Lux Collective, about a year before they actually closed, they had reached out to the owners of Fashionphile, who are Sarah and Ben. No, I don't know them personally, but that's what they're called. They had reached out to them and they had been very supportive and very welcoming from what they say on TikTok. And they went over to America, met with them, saw their setup, because one thing nobody can deny is that Fashionphile are doing something right. They're huge. They have so much stock, as I keep going on about. They, I'm sure, are profitable, but they do it in a way that it's working. And I do know that there's criticism in the comments anytime I talk about them, about the price they sell bags for, and we've talked about that, but also that the buyout that they offer can be quite low. They're buying it out though. They're buying it into their stock and they're building their profit into that, and they're building their costs and their outlays into that. So if you want to go for somewhere like Fashionphile, you get the bonus of buying out your item there and then, so you get your cash quickly, but you're always going to get a lot less than somewhere that is, for example, doing consignment, or somewhere that doesn't have physical stores like they do, or doesn't have the size of an operation that they do. You will get more back from those places. So you have to decide for yourself, what is more important? Is it preferable to me to just sell this and get the buyout, or will I wait and go somewhere smaller and get more of my money returned to me? And those are criticisms I hear quite a lot in the comment box. But one thing we can't deny is they're doing something right. When they went to see them, they spent a lot of time talking to them about how they do their business, how they run certain things, about systems that they have. And when they came home, I would imagine their intention was to try and implement more of that. And they're quite honest to say when they first were opening about a year in, they looked at Fashionphile and tried to copy as much of their model as they could. Fast forward to whenever they close, they then contact Fashionphile and say, this has happened. We have a customer list, we have social media, we have a website, we have intellectual property. Would you be interested in buying it? And what I understand happened then, and this is all coming from their own reporting on their TikTok and also from the news articles that there are, that Fashionphile then said, come and see us. And whatever happened in those meetings, they came to an agreement that Fashionphile have now bought over Lux Collective. And what it will be called is Fashionfile Collective, and this will be the UK branch of Fashionphile. I am excited about this, but maybe not too excited, and I'll explain why in my thinking. But I do think that it's a fabulous step forward for the handbag lover in the UK that is looking to try and buy some of the pieces that you can't get, and I've said often, we just do not have the same level of stock and inventory in Preloved in the UK as they do in America. Look at the size of America as a country where they can get their stock from versus the size of the UK. And that moving over here, that footprint is great expansion for the Fashionfile brand and the Fashionfile business, but also hopefully brings some more of that accessibility over into the UK. Now, I did look on their TikTok, and some of the comments on the videos talking about this is the pricing. What is the pricing going to be like? Is it going to be like on Fashionfile, and how is that going to work? All of that remains to be seen, because this is in its infancy and its early stages, and it will roll out more as a Fashionfile brand. If you're looking for it online, it's still under the Lux Collective website, so it's going to take a bit of time. But I wonder, and one thing that would excite me is if they can get access to the US stock. I don't know how it's going to work, if it's going to be the UK division of Fashionfile, or if it's going to be like an overall company where stock can move between the different stores. If they could move the stock that they can get access to in the US over to the UK, so as you could effectively shop from one overall umbrella Fashionfile website, happy days, happy days, happy days, happy days. I don't think that's going to be possible because of the customs issues. I imagine what's going to happen is there's going to remain the original Fashionfile website, which is US based, and then there's going to be the UK website, which is going to be this Lux Collective, Fashionfile Collective branch. And I would imagine, and this is the thing that stops me being totally excited about this, is that the stock will still remain a lot less than what is available in Fashionfile. And it may be, and I wonder what it's going to change about what the Lux Collective model was. Is it still going to be the same sort of stock levels that Lux Collective had? Or are we going to get some sort of an increase and access to these gems and these beauties, because I love this bag, that they have in Fashionfile in America? And that remains to be seen. My gut instinct, because of all of those logistical problems of trying to work from one stock base and moving it between places and the cost to ship it and the customs and all of that, I think would be an absolute logistical nightmare. And I imagine they will be ran separately. I think Fashionfile also bought over a Chinese company, if I am correct, and they kept that as separate, in that it was under their label and under their business model, but it's not access to the American market. So I imagine what's going to happen is Lux Collective becoming Fashionfile Collective will be the Fashionfile branch, the UK Fashionfile branch, sorry. But I don't think we're going to get access to all of their stock. Hopefully, though, the fact that they've brought their business name and logo and model into the UK will give access to some more of their stock. Maybe they will help almost front load the availability of stock in the UK. Let's see. I do think it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the pricing is like. I imagine Lux Collective now being Fashionfile Collective, they're running it for Fashionfile, so I would imagine there'll be no consignment anymore. It will be all buyout, which generally means you're getting a slightly lesser price. Let's see how that works. Let's see what the stock levels are like and whether or not the pricing is in keeping, because we talked about this quite a lot. The pricing on the resale market now is in a slump. It's definitely not when it was up there, although it got crazy when it was up there. But it'll be interesting to see what the pricing is like, what the availability is like, stock levels are like, and how this all works out. But I do think, as a handbag lover, my initial thoughts of this are quite cautious optimism, because I just hope it does bring some of that Fashionfile presence into the UK, because as I said, when we were in New York, being in the Fashionfile headquarters, I think actually maybe the headquarters is the Carlsbad location and New York is one of the flagships. Anyway, it was amazing, and the bags to see were amazing, and what they had to just try and touch and feel and look and try on yourself that you just don't get to do in stores was absolutely, for me, wonderful. Yes, the Statue of Liberty was great too, but so was Fashionfile. And I would love if they could kind of try and replicate that here. But let's watch this space, because it's going to take some time, obviously, to rebrand, but also to work through how they're going to do it. But I thought it was interesting, and I thought that I would like to keep an eye on it, because, you know, Amelia, you don't shop enough. Yeah, I know. So let me know what your thoughts on this are. What are your thoughts on Fashionfile and then moving to the UK? And do you think that it'll give access to much more? Do you think it's pretty much going to be the same, just a rebranding of Lux Collective? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment box. Thank you so much for watching this little chat. If you have enjoyed it in any way, please do consider giving it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please do consider subscribing. And if you're not done with me yet, I'm going to leave another video for you on the screen to enjoy. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for always watching me and just supporting me. And please take care, have a great day, and I will see you again in the next one.